Oh, yeah.
Hi, I did not know that.
A few minutes ago.
Even a broken
call them too.
How's it going?
Pretty good.
Yeah, when you're full screen, you don't get the toolbar anyway, so that kind of works out in this sense. I mean, and if you're going to show people how to navigate it, doesn't hurt. We have Adobe. We can edit it. Get Greg on it. Actually have decent editing options. Screencast and copy. Do you ever use it? I haven't, and I you know what's funny is I troubleshoot it more than I use it because like during the pandemic, post-pandemic is when we're using it a lot more. So.
Yeah, I'll start. Are we ready, Peggy?
Good, you?
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming. Hello, I'm Amy Schellenkamp. I'm the director of the Maria Reiner Center. I know most of you, right? We all know each other.
Yeah.
We would like to introduce Dr. Peggy Buffington today, so thank you. She's been here 2 days in a row. We're going to have to
I'm moving in.
start getting her to come more often, but that means she has to retire, so that's not going to happen.
No.
She's probably not even old enough to join, so.
Well, I don't know about
Thank
that.
you, Peggy. Take it away.
All right, thank you so much. Hey, it's good to see all of you again. Actually, I probably have seen many of you in the last week. How many of you went to the play on Sunday? Raise your hand if you went to the play. Right, so Sunday, yesterday, we had a great brunch with the students. I want to thank all of you for interacting with them. And I do think it's extremely important for them to interact generationally, right? They have a lot to learn from you, and I want you to learn about them. I mean, we all have different things in our generations, and they chuckle a little bit and you chuckle a little bit, right? It's dynamic and it works. So today, thank you all for coming because this is a really important presentation for the community of Hobart and our school system, which you've been awesome in supporting us. I'm going to be talking about the referendum that was overwhelmingly approved in 2017, and we're looking to renew it in 2025. That's because referendums expire. They only last for 8 years. So that's really important for people to be able to know that, because it isn't like I would just ask you to give us money in a referendum if I didn't need it. And the problem is that it's going to expire, and that will mean revenue loss for the school district, no different than it did when we went out in 2017. So I want to thank you again for being here today, and I'm going to go over this with all of you. So what is in today's presentation? Why referendums? They expire, which I talked about. The circuit breaker tax cap, which property taxes and circuit breaker I will use in the same terminologies. The operational fund history, understanding the difference in funds permitted for school districts to use. What is our solution? And talk about home values in Hobart. And your support is really needed. So let's go ahead and get started. So why referendums? In 2008, the legislators in Indiana, they actually put in property tax caps, and then it was signed into the Constitution of Indiana. And what are the property tax caps? 1% for residential, 2% on a property tax cap for farmers and landlords, 3% tax cap for businesses. So that's really important for you to understand. They put that in the Constitution, and so you will never pay more than those property tax caps. Well, what's really even more interesting is that started in 2008. St. Joseph and Lake County, we had so much debt in these counties that they couldn't impose that on us. And what ended up happening, they did not impose that on Lake and St. Joseph until 2020. Well, our school system in particular, we hired a policy analytics to tell us how much are we going to lose? And so we knew based off of a study in 2017 we knew we were going to lose approximately $2 million out of our operating fund. And that's when we had to go to the voters, because we said we can't afford to lose $2 million with that property tax cap. And we were able to demonstrate to you, and I'm going to show you that in a couple of minutes, like how your property tax would go down, and if you would just give a little bit back to us, that would take care of it. I'll demonstrate that in a minute. Here's what's really significant though, everyone. I want you to notice, since the tax caps have been put in, between 2008 and 2024, there have been over 275 referendums placed on ballots. That's significant, everyone. And that is signaling that schools do not have enough money to run their school systems. Specifically, 184 of them were aimed at supporting operating costs. So you have to find a way to try to make up for that lost revenue. And so I'm going to demonstrate to you today how we did that in 2017, and we'll talk more about that in this presentation. As of now, you can look at, let's just look locally at these referendums. I'm sure you're very familiar with the fact that Lake Station ran a referendum in the spring of 2024, and they lost. And then they ran again in the fall of 2024, and they won. And you know, they had lots of things going on with what happened in the fall. Their students only went to school 3 days a week. And so that was really painful for their community. Not that we would ever do that, but I'm just telling you as an example, look what some of this can cause. You know, it's just not a good thing. In 2025, you will notice that Crown Point is seeking an $8 million referendum. You will notice that we are seeking that $2.8 million referendum, and I'll go over the mechanics of that $2.8 million in just a little bit. So out on our website, I left the 2017 referendum so that you could reference it, and you could see, what did we talk about in 2017? I came to you, I told you what our problem was, and you really, people were asking us, how did your community, 70%, overwhelmingly go for this in referendum, because it was unheard of to have that positive of a response? Well, I have my own thoughts on why. I mean, like, we were able to demonstrate to you what our needs were, but we are definitely a unique community, generationally speaking. I mean, you're Brickies, most of you have been here all of your life, and you know, you pay it forward. And that's what I can honestly say, that you bleed purple and gold. So let's go over what this means though, because this was a very difficult thing to explain to people in 2017. So we knew that your property tax would go down, and it may be hard for you to read this, but there's that little yellow tag up there is capital referendum, and the brown one is an operating referendum. And the purple is that tax base. Well, we knew in 2020 your taxes would go down to that level, and you know, you still would be receiving a tax break. So what did the school district do? And it's really important to explain this to you. When we built the high school, there were new rules that were governing construction, and we had to cut the pool. That was way back in 2016, or no, not 2016. 2009 is when we opened. We started the process back in 2006. But under the new regulation by the governor, you know, they had a per dollar per square foot, a little different in Indianapolis versus Lake County. And so they said, you know, you have to sacrifice something. You either cut the field house or cut the pool. So we cut the pool. I think many of you understood that at that time, that was very painful, because we were trying to get everything on one campus. And we had swimmers literally getting up at 5 in the morning to swim at Hobart Middle School, trucking back down to the high school, then going back to the middle school for their afternoon swim and competition. And so we came back to the voters and we basically said to them, hey, look, we can build an elementary school and a pool, and you won't feel that because we actually refinanced the high school. It was at a higher interest rate. We refinanced, took down some of the debt, and we paid off debt, and it allowed us to do a capital referendum, and you wouldn't even feel that with your taxes. And I think everyone here would agree that Veterans Elementary is just beautiful on the Mundell property. And then in addition, if you haven't been to our pool, please go look at it. It's just spectacular, and we're grateful for it because our students really needed that pool. It's safety reasons and just to be able to compete on one campus. Come on in. Come on in. So anyways, everyone, I want to distinguish here that the capital referendum, that is not part of this referendum. That is not part of this at all. But the operating referendum is, because we came to you and said, back then, we're getting ready to lose $2 million out of operations, and we can't afford a cut that large. And so we said, we just need you to give a little bit back to us. 0.246, so think of a quarter per $100 assessed value. We just need you to give a little bit of that back to us so that we don't lose transportation. Go out and look at this. It's really important. And again, I want to just say thank you for your support because all of these things happened because you voted yes for it. So we thank you for that. Let's go out to an example so that we could talk about this. So again, knowing that it's 1%, 2%, 3%, let's just do an example. If your home was assessed at $100,000 and your current tax bill were $1,500, after the tax cap, your bill would have dropped to $1,000. And so that $500 reduction ended up being a $500 loss to your taxing units. Who are your taxing units? It would be your school district, it would be the city, Lake County, your libraries, and so all of us end up like sharing the cost of those losses. Right now, I can tell you that, even though we went out for that $2 million a year, the circuit breaker property tax just keeps growing. And despite the fact that we went out on a referendum, we're still short $3.1 million because of those property tax cuts. And it just makes it very difficult to run a school district when you can't predict all of this stuff and you keep losing money. Well, in 2025, I'm going to give you how this works, and I'm going to show you some examples. Our certified levy was $4.4 million, and you're like, what's that? That is your property tax that you would be billed for. We have our assessor here, Lino Maggio's here. I appreciate him being here because if you have questions, he will help you with that as well. But what happens is your assessment goes to, Lake County, then to the state, and this is what we used to get. I mean, like, that would have been the money we would have gotten from property taxes, but now you have that property tax cap at 1% residentially, right? This is how much that ends up costing the school city in 2025. It's $3.7 million. So if I take that and I subtract it, I only had this left, $731,000. And you're like, how in the world do you run an operation fund and your school corporation with just that left? Isn't that an interesting question? And I'm going to address that here in just a moment. I do want to point this out to you, though, because this is very interesting. If you watch the legislative session right now, the first version of Senate Bill 1 included more property tax relief. And the very first version was frightening. I mean, they calculated by school district what it would mean to school districts, and I was going to take another $3 million cut. I actually said, I emailed my senators the circuit breaker report, and I said, where am I going to get $3 million from? I only have $800,000 left. And so like, I was waiting for a response. You know, I was talking to the mayor about it as well, and he's here today. I'm appreciative of that, because that first version of that bill would have really cut into your city services as well, because he was getting ready to take a huge cut. Where that lands right now, neither one of us know. You don't know either. But inevitably, everybody wants property tax relief and tax relief, but not at the expense of services in your communities. And that's what we're faced with, everyone. We all want it, but what is a reasonable amount where you're not hurting your community? So we're going to learn a little bit more about this. I want you to not just take my word for it. I want you to be informed. So if you were to go out to in.gov, I'm sure Amy would get some people to help you out here on these computers. You can actually click on your county, and when you click on your county, you can actually go out and pull up circuit breaker reports. Now remember what I told you, keep property tax cap and circuit breaker one and the same. Most people refer to it as the circuit breaker, okay? So I'm going to show you what some of the circuit breakers look like. So in 2017, when we went out on the referendum, we knew it would not take effect until 2020. We actually told you we will not take any referendum money until 2020, and we kept our word. We did not have loss. We did not take any referendum money until 2020, even though we went out in 2017. Why did we do that? Well, we didn't want to do two referendums. We said just package it. We won't take any money from that. So let's look at the circuit breaker report starting in 2020. That top line, I know you can't see it, maybe, I don't know, but it's a little hard for me to see it now too, just to be honest. But it's about 1.9 million, everyone. That's the $2 million that started kicking in from the operational referendum that you voted yes for. Down here is our operation budget, and remember I'm talking to you about property tax levy. What we would have gotten, in 2020 we would have gotten 3.6 million. The circuit breaker was 1.3 million. That left us 2.2 million plus the referendum to try to run the operation budget. Okay, so that's really significant. Let's just go look at 2021. I'm not going to go over the top line with you because that's operation referendum that you voted for. I'm going to concentrate on the operation fund line. So in 21,
I wasn't aware of that. So, and to refresh all of our memory as to what had happened in 2017, can you refresh us with that, please?
Sure. So remember in 2020 that the circuit breaker property tax caps, they were going to take effect in Lake County and St. Joseph in 2020. So in 2017, the school district knew what their projected loss would be, and so it was around $2 million in 2017 that we projected we would lose that in 2020. So we went to the taxpayers in the community and said, you're getting ready to get a property tax decrease with the cap. Could you give a little more of that back to us, just a tiny bit, 0.246, about a quarter, right? And we'll be able to pay for bus services.
And that was the state that mandated that?
The property tax caps, yes.
Okay.
It's in the Indiana Constitution. So now what I'm showing you, and thank you for asking that. So I'm going back to those circuit breaker reports because they're really important for you to see what's happened to this. So in the operations budget in 2021, so the levy, the taxes that we would have collected was 3.7 million, but because of the property tax cap, it's now 2 million. I can't really see that up there. It's a little blurry. So really, at this point, after the circuit breaker, we had 2.7 million left. Let's go to 2022. And, you know, obviously you could see other school corporations up here. We're not the only ones affected by this. You can pull up reports from Lake County, Porter County, LaPorte County, where just choose your county and you can choose these reports. So now we're sitting in 2022 and the levy is 3.9 million. The circuit breaker is 2.5 million and we have 2.4 million left. let's take a look at 2023. Now, watch what happens in 2023, everyone. The levy that could have been collected was 4.2 million. The circuit breaker now is 3.4 million, $780,000 left. And you're just going, oh my gosh, what is happening here? 2024, property levy was 4.3, circuit breakers 3.5, $800,000 left for School City of Hobart. It is just crippling. And so it affects every district differently, everyone. So let's go to just like looking at this as a whole, you can see this is this line with the blue little circle dots. That's our levy, what we used to be able to collect, and then it goes up. But take a look at your operation circuit breaker levy in the dark green, okay? And then the referendum levy, well, thank goodness we had that for bus services. And then we have a shortfall. It's huge. It's $3 million. And it's very hard to run a school district, and you can't project your budgets when you're losing money all the time. So let's go to the next slide. I think it's really important for you to understand this part on this slide. So those circuit breaker reports that I just showed you, I took all of Lake County and Porter County and put it in a chart for you to see. And there's a reason for this, everyone. I had a great question from one of the presentations, and they said, why isn't Portage going out on a referendum? And I said, well, let's take a look at that, everyone. When I look at Portage Township School Corporation, their levy was 13.1 million, and their total circuit breaker was 1.6 million, and they had 11.5 million left. They only lost 12% of their levy. And so they don't need to go out on a referendum. Now, would they like that 12% back? I'm sure they would. But they're not in the same situation that we are. And so like I showed you earlier that Crown Point's going out on an $8 million referendum. Let's look at Crown Point. Crown Point, 10.9 million levy. The circuit breaker, 1.9 million. Post circuit breaker is 9 million. They lost 18% of their levy. Now, they're going out for 8 million. Their AV is about 4 times our AV. So I want to look at Hobart here for just a second. It's 4.3 million. The circuit breaker is 3.5. There's that 800,000 that's left. We're losing 81% of our levy. And it's hard to run a school district with that kind of loss. Take a look at our neighbor, Lake Station. All right, so their levy was 1.3 million. Their total circuit breaker is 795,000. They had 559,000 left. 58.7% of their levy was loss. Why are there differences in these levies? Well, I mean, like when you look at Hobart, we're primarily residential. A lot of people look at it and go, well, you've got the mall, you've got the TIF district out there on 61st Avenue. That is not us. We are bound by the School City of Hobart, and the district has different boundary lines. So go to that next slide for me, if you would. So I'll let Terry explain this. He loves to explain boundary lines, if you would.
Well, the easiest way to say it is the school's boundaries are 61st Avenue on the south, roughly Mississippi Street on the west, County Line on the east, and Ridge Road on the north. Those are school boundaries. If anybody lives in Barrington, you're well aware of this because part of Barrington is in Ross Township, is Maryville School District. City boundaries and school boundaries are completely different. As Dr. Buffington mentioned earlier, some of the issues are, we're residential. We don't have bills. Portage has a mill, so they draw money from them. So everything we have comes from residential. So we're the 1%. And that's where we run into problems. The mayor one time, I wish he was still here because I'd rather say it when he's here. We had a committee meeting and he said, well, it's your own fault. The school system is doing so well, people want to live here. It's not that the developers want to build businesses, they want to build houses. So I guess if our school is in good shape, it's on ours. We can't help it.
Yeah. Let's go back to that chart for just a second.
Years ago, and I'm talking way back, when we annexed all that, I had said back then, we need to make the civil city and the school city congruent. They should be the same, because we would've got John Wood School, and we would've also got the mall for revenue for our community. Is it too late to do that now? Can we redraw the line?
That is definitely something that a lot of people ask, and, you know, your mayor asked that question too. That is a very complicated matter, and I would be happy to talk with you about that afterwards. I mean, like that,
Sue,
very
I
long
can tell
time
you-
ago.
I can tell you, the board looked at that, doing that.
Mhm.
Fiscally, we could not afford to do it.
Well,
We
there's do you want me to answer too, along with that? Maryville would have to agree to that.
Yeah.
Oh, I know, and they
Maryville's
about jumped up and
Maryville also
choked
made
me
it
when I
clear-
suggested that.
Maryville made it clear decades ago that they would not be willing to even part ways with that because of the tax base that it.
Well,
has.
and additionally too, is Terry, I think you could add that part about the finance side of it.
Yeah, the other issue is, we wouldn't just get John Wood School, we'd have to buy it.
And take on their
We would have to
debt.
take 1/20th of Maryville School District's debt for all their buildings, because they use all their buildings as part of their money. We just couldn't do it cash-wise, and we couldn't get, the state wouldn't allow it, and Maryville, because Maryville wasn't gonna do it.
Mm-hmm.
We looked at it, believe me, we looked at it. There was a time where kids could pay to come into Hobart. We're a closed boundary now, because now, if you're going to bring any outside kids in, it's a general lottery. I can't say, okay, this student can come to our school. It goes into a pot, and it could be anybody, anywhere, if they go into the lottery, would be able to come in. So the people in Barrington that are on the Ross Township side may not be able to come, but somebody that lives over on the other side of Maryville in Bon Air, if they won the lottery, they'd be able to come.
Right,
So-
that's only if you're an open enrollment
Right.
district, and
We're not. That's why we're a closed district.
Right, so this is a very complicated matter.
So what's the difference between open and closed?
Well,
We don't accept outside students.
I understand that.
If we were open, anybody would be able to.
but even if we did open our enrollment, that doesn't mean that we would get them all. We wouldn't get them all, we wouldn't get the TIF. You would have kids from anywhere in Northwest Indiana could apply to be in the school district under open enrollment. Now, pardon me?
I think because of the condition of the mall, we don't want them all.
Well, and so the point would be here too, a lot of people, and I wanna just like finish that so that I can go on and I'll talk more about that if you want after this presentation. Let me just point out, everyone, you are looking at a state that supports universal vouchers. I mean, like, kids can go wherever they wanna go if your school districts have open enrollment. If a school district chooses to have open enrollment, and it's important for people to understand that would be a board decision, and, you know, obviously listening to their constituents. But here is what's important. You only advertise the number of spots you have available for open enrollment. So let's say that I had 20 spots in kindergarten, 10 spots in first grade. You go through and you assess how many spots you have left. You advertise how many spots you have left. And if more people apply for the spots that you have, then you have to have a lottery. And so that's how open enrollment works. And so it's kind of complicated too, but you can kind of see, you know, I think the state is trying to force people to go to open enrollment. And they also just have some athletic eligibility things where it's like you get a 1 year pass now on athletic eligibility so that people can do their little transfers with vouchers and open enrollments. So those are just complicated issues. They really are. Let's go back to this because, you know, a lot of people, if you look at this chart, you would say, well, look at Gary. They lost 81% of their levy too. That's true. They have a lot of charter schools in Gary, right? They get a lot of federal subsidies. So, I mean, it's just a different ballgame. But when you're looking at this, everyone, you can see there are huge differences. You know, these are critical times for us to understand that everybody is losing services that have those higher losses because of the levy and the property tax cap. So let's go to the next slides. So we knew in 2017 it was estimated at 2 million. It's about 2.8 million right now. I'll show you that in just a moment. We're not asking for a tax rate increase. We're saying just keep everything the same. If they would have just allowed it, you would go on and you wouldn't even know anything, but they make us come back to you and say, will you please renew this? And that's what we're asking. We're asking you to don't let it expire. Say yes, just renew it. No tax rate increase. So let's go on to the next slide. And I do want to explain this because a lot of people were suggesting, could you cut this? Could you cut that? And I need you to understand how we operate in school finance. You have an education fund and an operation fund. All right? So the education fund is state tuition. So no local property taxes go for an education fund. All right? Now, if I have 3,800 students and I get $7,000 a student, that's what it's intended for, and I'm going to show you what we pay for out of that fund. Because a lot of people were like, why don't you just cut this and cut that? And it doesn't really work that way, everyone. You have to spend in your funds, okay? You can't commingle. You have to stay in your funds. Here's your operating fund. Property taxes, which are capped, that circuit breaker reports that I showed you. County supplemental tax, financial institution tax, excise tax, commercial vehicle excise tax. Up to 15% of your education fund revenue can be transferred to the operation fund. You're like, what? Guess what? The legislators started seeing we can't afford to pay our bills. So they came out and they were like, wow, we're going to allow you to transfer 15% of this back over here. Thank you. Because that is one way I'm paying my bills. All right, so you see these two funds. Let's just go over these for just a minute. Here's the education fund. This is what it pays for. Teachers, administrators, subs, technicians, clericals, school counselors, classroom resources. Keep in mind now, no more textbook fees in the state of Indiana. They just threw it into this account. Athletics, performing arts, English language learners, special ed, aides, nurses, vocational, which is like the old shop classes, career and technical ed, and early college. All of that's out of the education fund. Let's take a look at our budget. Our budget is about $32 million, and there are state and federal grants that are inside of this. But where was the chunk of this, and it's important to realize this in any school corporation, the majority of your education fund is spent on salaries and benefits for people that are in running your school district and providing services to your students. And so these are all accounts that we're responsible for. They're monitored, they're maintained, and you can see that's exactly what we're doing with that. Let's go to the next slide and look at operations fund so that you know what that budget is. You have utilities, transportation, technology, maintenance of facilities, property casualty and cybersecurity, and school safety. Let's stay on that for just a minute. Our utility bill with NIPSCO, $1.7 million. So if you were to go back to what I showed you and you only had $800,000 left, how in the world do you pay your utility bill? Well, thank goodness for the transfer. I'll show you that in a minute. When I show you this, transportation I didn't even include in our budget because the referendum was paying for it, right? Technology, I have a federal grant that pays for our internet access. Thank goodness for that, right? Maintenance of facilities, if you are a taxpayer in this community and the board and myself were not taking care of your buildings, you would be so angry at us, right? I mean, you would. We do a good job of taking care of these buildings for our kids, and it's an investment not only with our children, but the buildings themselves. You don't want them falling apart. Property casualty, this cybersecurity, I don't know what to tell you except for it's very expensive, and it's a big thing now in every school district. And school safety, you know, our SROs are very important to us.
Please don't use acronyms. Please don't use acronyms.
I'm so sorry.
I don't know what that
SRO.
means.
I'm sorry, school resource officer, thank you.
And earlier you said AV somewhere along the line.
Assessed value, your property value, I'm so sorry, thank you for that. Your school safety, the school resource officer, they're Hobart police officers in our school district. And so, we have a grant that pays a portion of that. The city pays 40% of that, we pay 60% of that. But this is a huge thing in school districts, and I think we all realize how important it is to have SROs in our schools. And, you know, I appreciate the fact that, you know, after Sandy Hook, you know, you had 19 children lose their lives. And I'm just gonna tell you that, you know, the school board, the city council, the mayor, the chief, myself, we sat down and we said, are we gonna do this or not do it? I mean, like, we talk about it, and we said, no, we're gonna do it. And so, we've been committed to that, we've never changed our minds with it, and both of us, we're committed to that. They're more than just there for safety, they're mentors. I mean, like, the kids, it's good for your community to respect authority and to understand they're there to help you. And so we build and foster that with our kids. I'd love for you to come and see just the relationships they have with our school resource officers, because it's really a beautiful thing.
I have a question.
Sure.
One of my grandchildren told me that in middle school, there was a young man who had a gun all day. They discovered it on the bus.
Mhm.
How does that happen?
Well, I mean, he definitely was concealing it, and, no, he didn't tell anybody until he showed it on the bus. And so that is one of those things that nobody just knew it, and you're really, you're counting on people to tell you when something like that is gonna happen. See something, say something, we'll do something. And basically, that's about all I'm gonna talk about that particular case because it's still in the courts, right? So I do understand your concern with that completely. But we're reliant on people to tell us what they know without deciding that you're gonna do metal detectors, right? And so you have to think about that. And then you also have to think about there's challenges with metal detectors that we could spend a whole bunch of time on, and a topic for another day. But I'm happy to talk to you about that because they have their own challenges, right? So the budget here for operations is 9.3 million. That does not include transportation, everyone, because again, we use the referendum to pay for transportation. But what you're gonna notice is that the majority of it, when you're looking at the 26,000 lines, it's to support your buildings and your grounds and your school safety and your property insurance. So there you go, there's where most of that money is spent. And you gotta think most of it's utility, that 1.7 million, it hurts. We'll go to the next slide. So people ask, how do you pay your bills? Well, if it's 9.3 million, and the levy used to be where I would get 4.4 million, and the circuit breaker took 3.7 million, I have that number left to run, 731,000, I get to transfer 15% from the education fund to the operation funds. That put 5.1 million back into the account. Thank goodness, right? Then the balance consists of those supplemental taxes. Facility rental, we do rent out our facilities. Interest from bank accounts, not that great, but we'll take it. Federal and state grants, we add to the pot. County financial institution license and excise taxes. So we just meet our obligations, everyone. That's without paying for transportation. So the referendum in 2025 is to pay for transportation, just to keep the tax rate the same. Just say yes, and we just move on to pay for our buses. That line, and I have to explain this, there's nowhere to cut 2.7 million. There's nowhere. I showed you that budget, I can't pick away and get back 2.7 million. I can't cut to do that. It's too large. I told you that in 2017, and it's the same now. 70% of our Hobart students ride buses, and I want you to think about traffic flow when 30% are dropping their kids off, right? I mean, like, if you've been on 10th Street, and you're just like, yeah. So you're just like, I can't tell you how many times on 10th Street we've looked at different ways to try to ease that. How about over at Veterans now? How about the Early Learning Center? You know, we worked with the Hobart Police Department to do one-ways and all kinds of things, and that's at 30%, everyone. So we have to be thinking about this as a community because we all live and play together and work together. And let me just say this about the 70%. You know, there are some beautiful comments. I don't like following social media, but I love when parents chime in and somebody will send it to me and how important this is to them. You have working parents that rely on our bus services to get kids to school. And that's good for all of us, the economy, they're working, and so they're relying on us to help them get their children to school. And so I want to remind people how important that is. Let's talk about our fleet. We have 35 buses in the fleet. 31 of them are full-time, 4 of them are at the service center in case we have a breakdown, we need to trade buses, we need an extra bus for whatever. We have 6 activity buses, and we literally transfer our kids for clubs and teams. One of the things that I need to help you understand, even if this were not approved and we lost the referendum, I still have to provide bus services for this group of students. If they're special education, they get bus services. If they're homeless or in foster care, we have to provide services. And so a lot of times people get a little confused by this and they don't truly understand it. Like, they'll see one of the School City of Hobart buses in Maryville, and they'll say, why is our bus in Maryville? And it's because if they're foster or they're homeless now, there is a provision, and it's a statute, that they've already experienced a lot of trauma. They get to come back to their home district where you know them, you get to take care of them. So don't get confused if you see our buses somewhere else. You probably would see them a lot in Porter County because we belong to the Porter County Career Center, and that's 10 high schools, and we trade kids. So, you know, like, they go to Portage for dental hygiene, dental assisting, but their students come to us for emergency services like if they're going to be an EMT, emergency medical technician, or, you know, paramedic or something like that. We trade students. So can you back that up one more time? This actually is a picture of our drivers. And I specifically wanted that there for a reason, because a lot of people say, why don't you just farm your bus services out? Just like, we still would have to pay for bus services, everyone, if we did that. And the thing that's really important to realize about that, it's actually more expensive. And not only is it more expensive, they're not really reliable. and I have colleagues that will tell you that. But here is the point I want to stress. These people that drive our buses, they're not just bus drivers. They care for our kids. Yeah, thank you for that. I mean, like, they're the first face they see in the day and the last face they see in the day. And they're like little mother hens. I mean, like, good example, kid drops his birthday cupcakes on the bus. What does one of my drivers do? They go to Strachan Van Til and they buy new cupcakes. Yes. You know, I mean, like, that's the kind of care people give. You don't want to lose that personalization that you get with our drivers. And many of them live here in Hobart. It's how they earn a living, right?
I don't mean to interrupt, but Vicki Ladd, our bus driver, she drives our 14-passenger bus 2 days a week. She was a retired school bus driver for Hobart for 40 years.
Yeah.
And we love her.
Yeah, she's awesome, isn't she? Yeah.
Yes.
So there's that as well. You know, when you think about community, and I know you understand this, you know, you pay it forward. Somebody did it for you, you do it for the next generation. But I think the thing that I love about this community is we take care of each other, right? And so even these folks right here, nothing gets past them. And I do think they are amazing individuals that care for kids, and that's what we need. So here is just a summary. Like, it's expiring. I need you to understand that. It only lasted for 8 years. We're asking you to renew it at the same tax rate, and it would be 0.246, right, of $100 of your assessed $100 value of your home, and protect our revenue loss here, and keep things exactly the same. And if you decide that you don't want to do that, we will lose transportation services because I can't cut $2.7 million out of that operation budget. I don't have it to do, okay? So here's where I need to educate you a little bit about what is legislated on the ballot and what the ballot is, because the ballot is confusing. And this is why Lino is here today, because I mean, like, he's an important figure that you can talk to about your tax rate, and if it's going up, it's going down. So let's just start off with, I have to tell the Department of Local Government and Finance, like, what is your budget? Well, you know, with a little bit of inflation, transportation, 2.7 million. And then there's a safety item up there that is 75,000, and then other operational needs. We have routing software that we use, that we have to have on our buses. That safety issue is now, a lot of things that we get are unfunded mandates. Alyssa's law is a safety thing that has to be in place by July 1, and it's every employee has to wear a panic button, right? So, like, they didn't give us money for that, but they told us you have to do that, right? And so that's included in there. But what you'll see, this is the number one question people ask me. Like, who are these people and why are they up here? They're charter schools, and you are required to share your referendum money. If they want to participate, you have to share it with them. So here it is. It's mandated, everyone.
The reason that those you have to share is they have students that reside in the Hobart district that chose to go to those charter schools. And the legislature made that part of their law, that they can share in a referendum because those students are actually home-based in Hobart. It's not just some random ones that were able to join.
Right, and there's,
But that's a private school,
Yes,
Yeah.
private company.
Yes.
That we're funded.
yes.
How many kids in Hobart do we have going to charter school?
it really depends. I mean, like, right now, I could probably run a report for you. There's probably like maybe, I don't know, there might be like 13 kids, or I don't know, that might be 20, something like that. But if you called my office and you want the specific numbers, I would look them up for you. You know, for various reasons, whether a parent or a child, they might decide to do that. There's some current legislation out there, I don't know what'll happen, but if it passes, if you have a brick and mortar charter school in your district and it has over 100 students in it, you have to share your property taxes with them. So I mean, like, it's really getting very interesting with all of these things. Sometimes legislation is not helpful when you're trying to run a great school corporation. You just sit and watch that. We don't have any brick and mortar charter schools. That's why you will see Ridgeview is leased to Geminis Head Start, and the why, they pay for that building with lease agreements, and I would not part with that, neither would the board, to a charter school. And can you imagine now a new law going into play where then I'd have to share all the property taxes with them? Okay, I'll go to the next slide. Okay, this is the most confusing part of this, and this is where I really need you to understand what's happening here. Because the last time you went into the ballot, you're like, it said it's increasing my taxes. Well, what was the intention of the property tax cap? It was to reduce your taxes, and I came back to you and I said, hey, could you just give us 0.246 back? And so that's considered an increase because they decreased your taxes, right? What does the ballot question say now? Listen, everyone, we don't get to control the ballot question. This comes from the Department of Local Government Finance. I have nothing to do with it. Trust me, I would have a much better question. But I want you to pay attention to what's going on here so that we all understand it when you go into the ballot box. Shall School City of Hobart continue to impose increased property taxes paid to the school corporation? The property tax cap at 1%, 2%, 3%, if you do anything that changes the relief you're getting, it's considered an increase, right? So even notice the word continue. I'm going to continue that. If you voted no, you would have a decrease of 0.246, right? So if you let it expire, you will have a 0.246 decrease. We're asking you, and they consider it an increase because you could have the whole kit and caboodle, right? They're like, hey, I'm trying to give this to you. You don't have to do this. When you get down further, it goes on to say that the property tax increase it requested was approved by the voters in 2017, and if you extend it, it will increase the average property tax paid to the school corporation, and on a year on a residence within the school corporation by 26.84%. And that's the overall in Lake County. That has nothing to even do with the referendum. Again, they don't want you to do referendums. They're like, look, we tried to give you property tax relief. They did. I'm going to show it to you. But in our case, it's just crippling. It's so awful. When you go into the ballot box, just remember the increase, it's considered an increase because it's not your total 1% that you could have had. And I'm going to show you that on a cost calculator. Here you go. This is the auditor certification, and notice it says 0.246. It's the same as 2017. It's no different. Let's go to the next slide. Here's an example of the cost calculator that I'm going to go out and show that to you live. So it's important to recognize here that, like this example, I used a home that was $150,000. And then, is this a homestead property? If you check the box, yes. A standard deduction, $48,000. Supplemental homestead, $35,700. Net assessed value now is $66,300. Your gross tax was $2,614, but because of the circuit breaker, it's only $1,500, right? So we came out to you in 2017 and said, could you give 0.246 back to us so we could pay for transportation? Same proposal in 2025. Here's the exempt tax. You would be giving $163 back to us. It's not that much, everyone, to continue bus services, right? And so I'm trying to show you that, like, you are getting property tax relief, but it's just a small portion to give back to us to continue that service. This gets asked all the time, particularly in the month of April. I get people calling my office like, what did you do? And I'm like, nothing. I'm running a school corporation with the means that I have. But here's what this is a huge question that gets asked. And again, this is a great question if you have questions or concerns. That's why Lino is here today. And so he can talk to you. Raise your hand, Lino. He's the Hobart assessor, and he can help you with any questions that you have, okay? This is off of the MLS, and so this is what appraisers use and realtors use for home value, okay? This is based off of a single-family residence, and I want you to see what happened in 2017. In 2017, an average house was listed in Hobart for $134,000. Okay, move over to 2024. The average listing price for a home in Hobart now is $246,000 in 2024. And so like, look down here at the high value. A house that listed for $399 in Hobart is now like $599. And that's 2024 data. Let me give you a stat that would really surprise you. When we opened up Veterans on Wisconsin Street, we opened that school with about 440, 450 students. I am over 600 students in that school today. And everybody's like, what? How did that happen? Well, there's affordable housing over there, but I want you to understand the affordable housing and the cost there. What would have been a house that cost $75,000 is like $150, $175, $200,000. Lino?
Yeah, she's correct.
Yeah.
There's quite a few houses selling by the Mundell area that are going for low 200s.
Right.
2 bedrooms, 1 bath, and a slab.
Yeah, those are just small ones.
Right. But when you're looking at your tax bill, everyone, it's important for you to understand, if you're not selling your house, you're probably like, what's the value of my house? Your taxes go up based off of your market value and other taxing units, right? So 0.246, never changed it, and so please understand that, okay? Let's go to the election on May 6th. And we're just asking you to keep everything the same, to keep our transportation department, same tax rate. And it's May the 6th. Early voting right here in this building starts April the 8th. So let's talk about this, because you have a lot to be proud of. And I want to make sure that everybody understands what you have a lot to be proud of here. Great communities have excellent schools. I know the mayor would probably want to talk to you about that. And so let's just talk about the class of 2024. High school, very different than when you went to school. I think if you were to talk to board members here and some of my colleagues, my life's mission has been about reinventing high school. Been on that mission since 1999, and we are very progressive in this manner. We have an early college, we call it Hobart University. The class of 2024, 27% of that class graduated with an associate's degree, 2 years of college. That means they have 2 years left, everyone. $7.5 million in savings to families here in Hobart. 30% of that class graduated with 1 year of college, which is good. That's actually the Indiana College Core now. And there are high schools still struggling to be able to offer something like that. Very proud of that work. 41% of that class graduated with a credential, and you're like, what does that mean? Well, certified nursing assistant, AutoCAD, maybe they took some classes that qualified them to have an internship or an apprenticeship in a trade school. Those are beautiful stats for the class of 2024. We actually mentored other high schools to get early college and career endorsements because of the success of our programming. Here's something that is really significant too. We've been doing Project Lead the Way in this district since 1999, but we're a distinguished school district, meaning all of our schools do STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. There's only 17 of those districts in the country, and that would be School City of Hobart. We have an early learning center that is just so unique to this community. Thank you. Our early learning center is so unique, and I do want to talk a little bit about that. Back in 2009, when schools started getting funded by the sales tax with the tuition, everyone, they found themselves in a recession, and they cut schools' budgets in the middle of a school year. We were cut, back in 2009, we were cut $1.2 million in 2009. In 2010, another it's 1.2, excuse me. 1.2 in 2009, 1.2 in 2010. Wow, we didn't know how we were going to do that. And so we consolidated the elementaries and opened up the Early Learning Center because they were offering full-day kindergarten grants. And so we were one of the first school districts in the state to offer full-day kindergarten. And it was paid for by that grant. But this ended up being such a beautiful addition to School City of Hobart. You have preschool there, you have early identified special needs children that go there before kindergarten. You have birth to kindergarten where we're helping new parents with brickies from the start. And then we have a little coalition with all the preschools in Hobart trying to prep them on curriculum. Like, this is the kindergarten curriculum, what should yours be? This is a beautiful example of prepping children for what's ahead and their parents. And of course, the biggest thing, if you didn't see it, is just our innovation in technology. I mean, we've always been innovative in technology. We were one of the first school districts to be one-to-one, where every student had their own laptop. And during COVID, you had these very affluent suburbs of Chicago, neighboring districts, they weren't prepared for COVID. And that's because we had the foresight that every child should have their own computer to help them with the learning process, and we survived COVID because of it. But more importantly, we're not afraid of innovation. And so in November of 2022, when ChatGPT, artificial intelligence, came out, and if you haven't tried it, you should let my kids teach you how to use it, because it's really fun. They really like it. But the point is, a lot of school districts, when it first came out, banned it. Like, you can't use it. You cannot run from technology. You have to learn how to ethically use it and how to use it well, because their future will depend on that, right? They will be using AI in their careers. We were featured on 60 Minutes for leading that innovation to show people how to do it, right? And so you should be proud of that. There's so much more I could tell you about this. This doesn't even include athletics and performing arts. I'm just giving you a taste of how great your school system is. I don't know, Mayor, you want to interject?
Yeah, I get the privilege to travel around to different communities, talk to different mayors. And as a new mayor, a lot of these older mayors want to take you under their wing. And one of the things, the overwhelming thing that I heard when I first went to, there's this thing called Mayor Institute, so I go down there and learn how to be the mayor. They said, make sure that you have a strong relationship with your school superintendents. And the reason being is they found that communities that have strong schools are typically strong communities. And how important it is to have a good relationship with your school. We are fortunate and unfortunate to be in Lake County where we can see some communities that don't have strong schools and what's happened to those communities outside of the school. So as I look at the referendum, as I look at all of the whole parts of the city as a whole, while I have nothing directly to do with the school other than helping with Dr. Buffington and school resource officers and school safety, and I get to see it from a different perspective and the things that we want to do within our community, and I understand that at the core of that has nothing to do with me, has nothing to do with our city council. It has to do with having a strong school system that really basically springboards us into the future of the things we want to do. Because I will tell you that it's already been said to me that if transportation's cut and the school is not able to provide the resources, the people that can leave do. They go to schools and they go to places that have those opportunities for their kids. And then what they're forced to do is sell their home for less than it's worth, right? And then the next person comes, and then that trend continues, and then you see what some of our surrounding communities have gone through. What does that do for us, right? Like like my grandfather that's kind of doesn't really maybe care the value of his house. What it does do though, is it sets up the generation, increases the tax rate as the values go down, the tax rate goes up, right? So you don't see that true savings. And so it's so critical and so important for us as a community to have really strong schools. And part of that is the total package, all the opportunities. It's not just having a strong school with strong PLTW. It's having all the opportunities that one that's raising a family would expect to have within their school district. And it starts with, it has transportation. I know me personally, as your mayor, I get into work at 7, sometimes 6:30. My wife's at work at 7. We need the bus. If not, you're gonna have a real part-time mayor. I'm gonna get my kid to school. But no, it's super critical and super important to have a strong school system. And I hear it all the time, developers coming into our community. I'll tell you, one of the struggles that the school has, I think it was already mentioned, about the residential development within the school district. Because all the available lands are being bought up by people that want to send their kids to Hobart schools, and it doesn't lend its hand to industrial, and those property 3 tax cap percentages, which would help. Everyone wants to be in the Hobart School District to send their kids to Hobart schools. And so it's a challenge for us, right? And a challenge for the school, because all that's the 1%, the residential properties that are in Hobart. And it's probably Dr. Buffington's fault, because she's done such a good job, but it's kind of one of those things that is an exciting opportunity for us as residents coming in. And what I love about our community, and I'll just kind of, sorry, I don't want to steal the thunder here.
No, you're great.
I'll kind of wrap this up as one of the things is, while talking to other mayors, what I have found is that people that come to Hobart, they come here maybe their first time, they raise their family, their kids come back. And they have kids, and they raise their family. And a lot of our communities, we're like on 3rd, 4th, 5th generation brickies that have come back here because it's a sense of place. And the school district is a huge part of that, because they have created that sense of community for us. And it's our duty, our obligation, and our responsibility to pay it forward to the people that come behind us. And so we can continue to do that and continue to build a new community. So I hope I didn't take up too much time.
Thank you,
All
Mayor.
right.
You said that well. So let's go to the next slide. So I'm just, thank you again. But this is really important, everyone. You can early vote here. And I'm asking you to keep everything the same. Please don't let it expire. Same tax rate. Don't be confused by the ballot question. And then we'll just keep our transportation department. So now what I'm going to do is go out to some frequently asked questions. And I might have already answered these, and you're almost done, everyone. Who can vote? We talked about this. Only people in school city of Hobart boundary lines can vote. If you have friends that are within the boundary lines, we ask that you be our supporters and ask them to vote yes for this, please. Let's go to the next line. If you're not registered to vote, you can go out to indianavoters.in.gov, and I'm sure Amy would help you register to vote. Let's go to the next question. Where can I find information about early voting? Scroll down. Again, it's at this place right here, starting on April 8th. Would love for you to vote early. Go on the next question. A lot of people ask us about food service. Food service has nothing to do with the referendum. They are self-supporting. They get federal grants for free and reduced lunch, and then of course paying patrons, and that's their budget. We have nothing to do with their budget except for oversight as a local education agency. External busing, we addressed that. Oh, this is a huge question that people ask me. Well, what about our athletic teams and extracurricular? If we don't have buses, we don't have buses for athletics and extracurricular. You don't have any buses except for those categories. Special ed, foster children, homeless children. Okay, let's go on to the next one. We already did property tax value. We already did who we're required to pay for if we don't have it. This is a very important question. If the referendum fails, what happens to the fleet? Well, you know there's 35 buses in the fleet. And you also know there was like 6 activity buses. So let me kind of give you a flavor for that. And I don't know how this legislative session is going to end. I truly don't. But I can tell you they're saying referendums probably going to happen in the general election on an even year. So let's say, and I don't know that that happens, but let's say that it does. If this referendum does not pass, that means you would have to wait till 2026 in a general election in order to do it again. Now, I don't know if that bill will pass, so I don't want you to go out here and say that it did. I don't know, but that's what's being proposed. So that makes a very interesting question to your school board. Like, what do you do with the fleet? Do you let all those buses just sit at the service center hoping that it would be like approved in 2026, if that's what that happens. I need to tell you this, like, since COVID, I mean, we used to get a bus for $70,000. They are expensive. They now run $140,000 to $170,000 a bus, and you know, like the 170 would be with a lift. They're expensive, everyone. If you sell your fleet, you'll never get it back. I'm showing you that because of cost. And so, like, you want to protect your investment. And it is important to the community despite all of that, but look at the cost that would be involved with that. Someone asked me if we would do a hybrid schedule like our neighbor. Never. I want kids to be live. There are conditions where I would allow a student to be virtual, right? I want kids in our building taking advantage of opportunities. I want to get to know them. But bottom line is there are children that's not the best environment for them. And sometimes it's hybrid until we can help figure out or get them more involved. I will tell you, since COVID, we have a lot of kids that anxiety prevents them from being in a school building. And so we're helping them with that. We're doing the best that we can. We already talked about traffic flow. Yeah, this is a good one. You know, someone asked me this at a presentation about senior citizens, and they're like, why should they vote for it? And I said, well, believe it or not, you know, you're the largest voting bloc that voted for it last time. And why? Because I think this is your school district too. You come to our events, and you know, and I talked to them about the gold card, and notice I had Terry, and I had the students passing them out, because I actually met some people that weren't from Hobart. They moved here, and they actually said, the Maria Reiner Center is their saving grace. Well, welcome to Hobart, right? Welcome to Hobart. And then I also had a gentleman here where we were talking about, back in the day, it was called the Council of Aging, and he was like, what? I'm like, yeah. I was part of that committee. I did not name it. But, you know, this is how well the city and the school corporation work together. We traded services for this building. So like 10th Street, Union Street, the light, the city paid for that. We gave them this building when we opened the high school. It was an even exchange to have the birth of the Maria Reiner Center. There was vision there, everyone, and that's really great because here you are. But the point being is that, you know, like, you are an important part of paying it forward, and generationally speaking, that's what you have done. And we're thankful for that. That gold card, if you didn't get one, you know, you get, you can see Terry. You get into all of our events for free. You know, we have separate performances for you. And every time we have one of those, what do I say to you? Thank you. Thank you for providing this facility. I had a grandpa come up to me at one of the presentations. He goes, I have 3 sons that graduated from here, and I have 5 grandchildren that graduated from here. And he said, 4 of them are engineers. And he said, I am so proud of this school district. And I'm like, thanks for coming and supporting us. We are a generation of brickies, and we're proud of that. I also had a gentleman say, I don't get this when I get this in the mail about what my tax bill is going to look like. And I'm like, well, could somebody send me that so I could look at it on what yours looks like? Well, this is the confusing part. And like, also you could talk to Lino about this too. I'm so glad he's here. Just go over and talk to him. But this section right here is it's the summary of your taxes, right? So it's all of your taxing units. The city, the county, the library, the school. Well, you know, because he said, like, my taxes are $3,100, and when I look at the school district, they're getting $1,442, and then they're getting that up there. And I'm like, oh no, that isn't how you read that. You need to see up here, everyone, they're showing you in that top line, your property tax cap is right there. This is what you would have paid, but there's what your bill is now. But notice the second line. The second line literally says, did you approve something on a ballot, like a referendum? And notice the referendum was $349 on this house. Their total bill was $2,127. It wasn't this number down here. They're illustrating for you in those other lines, here's the property tax cap, and if you voted for anything like a referendum, that's what that is, and there's your total bill. Sorry, people keep calling me. Okay, so that's that question. Let's go down.
That's it.
If you want to show this to someone, here you go. Let's go out to our website. And if you go to the main menu on our website, you can go get this presentation. Hit that main menu button, go all the way down, and click on the referendum. Now, and when you hit this page, scroll down please, you've got, here's the referendum calculator, here's the 2017 referendum, I told you it was out there. Scroll down, we're actually recording this presentation and we'll put it out on the website, but here it is if you just want the slides. Now, let's go look at the calculator and then we're finished, everyone. I want to show this to you. It's really important that you see it. You can go out here and use the calculator for yourself. Go to the Lake County Assessor's website or talk to your friend Lino, right? Let's just put in 2017, all right? The average house was $134,000. Let's put $134,000. And notice you clicked on homestead property, standard deduction, homestead, your net assessed value, and then your gross tax. Back in 2017 would have been $2,204. The circuit breaker max that you pay now, $1,340. So your taxes did drop. The legislators want you to see that. And I'm happy for that too. In 2017, I'm like, could you just give a little of that back to us? And you voted yes. It was $137.51 at the tax rate of 0.246. Same in 2025. That's what we're proposing. Now, I want you to notice that that average home now is about $254,000. Let's just put that in. And so notice what the taxes are. And that same house, their taxes went up a lot, right? It wasn't me that caused those taxes to go up. But here's the circuit breaker. That's the max they'll pay, and we're like, can you just give this much back to us? And I mean, like Dave Cospate, he's a board member sitting in the back. He had to sit down and even explain it to a parent because they're like, I don't know about this. And Dave, I think your illustration is the best one. Can you just tell us how you broke it down for this parent?
Yeah, Mr. Craig, can you put in a $185,000 home? So I talked to a friend of mine who lives in the district behind Veterans Elementary. 2 parents, 4 children. They all 4, well, they have kids in kindergarten, they have kids in elementary school, and they have kids in secondary ed. So they have kids that go to school at 3 different start times in the morning, which I believe Mr. Mayor has the same. So we explained to them, so he's like, listen, man, he goes, we give everything we have. My wife and I both work. He goes, we need to save every penny that we possibly can. He goes, so I'm not seeing. He goes, I know it might only be a few $100s, but he goes, I can't give anymore. Like, so I pulled up the calculator and I typed in his home value, and I told him, I said, the second line from the bottom on the left where it says exempt referendum tax dollar, $219. So that is what, with the referendum, if you're voting yes, that you're giving back to the school district by voting yes. I said, that's $110, because in Lake County, we all know, right, we pay taxes in May and in November, so twice a year. I said, so $110 every 6 months for your kids to have transportation to and from school, right? 3 different times a day. I said, you can't drive your kids to school every day, 184 school days, and pay gas for $220, let alone, in fact, how are you gonna figure that out? You're gonna have to change start times for work, you're gonna have to get grandparents involved, or babysitters involved, or whatever else it might be. I said, so when you break it down that simple, he was like, you know what, you're right. He goes, that just makes sense. And obviously, he bought a home where his taxes were, he was already doing that. I mean, he was already paying it. He just figured, hey, if I can save a few dollars, why wouldn't I just vote no? And I just said, you're not gonna save any money. You're gonna spend a whole lot more trying to figure out how to get your kids to school every day.
Right, and so, and that is, you know, like economically speaking, everybody wants to make sure that, you know, that they're getting the best that they can live on. But as a community, we have to realize there's economics involved here for all of us when people are not working because they have to, like, quit their jobs or whatever. And I'm not saying that that would happen to everyone. There's inconveniences that we have to think about. But to really capitalize on what's most important here, communities provide services and we cooperatively pay for them, right? And so great school districts, great communities have excellent school corporations. We have one, and we're just asking you to keep everything the same. And you won't notice a difference if you vote yes, you really won't. I'll stay here for any questions that you may have. Are there any questions in the audience?
I just want to mention, I know there was a question about the school resource officers and an incident that happened. One of the things that I think is important too is you can't quantify it, but the stuff that doesn't happen, right? And by having those school resource officers in the building, in a perfect world, nothing would happen, but having those school resource officers as a deterrent, the overwhelming, the parents that I've talked to support having the school resource officers in all the buildings, so it's super nice, and we get asked all the time how we're able to do that in Hobart. And it's a super nice safety, peace of mind for parents as well. And then the other thing too, I do want to mention, in the banking world, any relief, so if you have a mortgage on your house and you escrow your payments, you're not going to see that relief probably for another year and a half until they recalculate your payment. So that's another factor, and so you're not going to see it that parent's not even going to see if there was potential relief. You wouldn't see it right away either until they recalculate your escrow payments.
Right, I mean, I think the easiest thing is that it's gonna be no different than last year. So if you vote yes, it's the same, right? I really appreciate this, yes.
I think you've done a very good job in dealing with a very complex subject, but, and obviously you have a time constraint. But the safety valve or the ability to move from the education fund over to the fund we're talking about within that limited, that's an important issue, and I would like to see a presentation on that, because the more efficient one might be in the education fund, then there's more leeway in other. So to the extent that the education fund can operate at a lesser expense by some found efficiency, that obviously would help with this fund over here. Because
Statutorily, you can only transfer 15%.
yeah.
So it does not matter if there's a ton of fluff over there in education, which there's not. I would tell you that you're only allowed to transfer 15%. It doesn't matter if I could transfer 25, the statute is clear, 15%. That's it,
Well, it's 15% of a total number.
correct.
So what comprises a total number is my discussion. Okay, so maybe what you're saying is, fine, theoretically there's efficiencies over there that are found. So to the extent that they are found, the education fund necessarily reduces. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
So there's no possibility of finding an efficiency there to help over here.
Oh, no. But I would also just tell you very respectfully, that education fund is, remember, that's state tuition. And so it's very, very fluid based on enrollment, right? So like, if I have 4,000 students, I'm gonna have more money. If I have 3,800 students, I just lost probably $1 million, right? So you have to run that efficiently, or you're gonna be in the same problem that you have over here. I can only tell you that I can't take more than 15% out of that account. It wouldn't matter how healthy that education fund is. That's just the statute, right? But I want to assure you that if you want to go over the education fund sometime, I would be happy to do that with you and how that works. It's run very efficiently, and it is a little hard to gauge that with enrollment today with vouchers and charter schools, because your enrollments can be a little like this. Right? And so you have to navigate those waters, but I would be happy to do that with you sometime if you would like. questions?
I have one. Is this gonna be a sustainable thing? I mean, why are we staying with the same tax rate? If, I mean, a
Well,
recession could be right around the corner, there's a lot of
I think that is a
volatility.
great question. And the fact is that I saw a neighboring school corporation get turned down. Would have I liked to say, give me a little more cushion?
Yeah.
I would have loved to have said that, but then what happens when it's like, that's not the same, you're raising our taxes and people turn it down? So literally, I mean, like, I took the bus replacement out of there and moved it into a small bond issuance so that I could keep that rate the same. As the gentleman said, school finance is extremely complicated. And so I have to think like the average voter would say no. If I said, hey, I'm raising your taxes, wouldn't you say, no, I'm not voting
Not
for
for
that?
this. You know, truly, that's the way I feel.
I would have loved to have said, I need a little more cushion. I was afraid for people to say no. I just simply moved the bus replacement out of there. Do I worry that that's gonna keep going up? I do. And I also worry what's happening in the legislators' session this time. That's scary to me.
Now, is this referendum gonna be up again in 2032 or 33?
Every 8 years.
Every 8 years?
Yep, every 8 years.
In our township, we have 3 schools, River Forest, Lake Station, and Hobart. All 3 of them are under referendums right now. Lake Station's at 54 cents per $100. River Forest is at $1.19. So Dr. Buffington asking for 24.6 cents, 0.24. I mean, it's as efficient as, I mean, she's doing us all a favor. Because,
Right.
you know, we pay a lot more.
Yeah, thank you, Lino.
Very
So the
responsible.
bottom line of all this is this is a problem that Hobart's had for many, many, many years, is that we do not have the tax base because we don't have businesses, big businesses. And you made the comment about the mall, but you know what, there's a lot of property along that same corridor that's got, Maryville Farm is a prime example, they're putting up all those buildings, that could be tax base, tax revenue for our community here
That's all in
Hobart.
Ross Township.
Yeah, that's not
So
Ross
all that
School
goes
District.
towards the Maryville schools.
They
Well,
get
that's
the
what I'm
taxes,
saying.
we maintain
So
the
what do we need
rules.
to do in order to get the businesses in Hobart? Because we are landlocked, we don't have much space. The civil city does, but the school city has, we're not growing anything for business and tax income for the school city of Hobart, other than houses, which in the same respect, it's like a sieve, it just runs out the bottom, you know? because
I think your mayor could address that. I know he's working hard to try to address that.
So you're right, you're exactly right. So I'll address that first, but I want to mention the other thing too. So I get asked this question, like school's budget, city's budget, right? How they're different. I have the fortunate ability that if we need to pave roads and we don't have the funds, we just don't pave the road, right? That's what happens. But the school city doesn't have that ability to say, yeah, we're just not gonna to teach this kid. We're not gonna educate. They don't have that ability. So I have some flexibility in our budget to say, hey, that pothole that's been there for 2 years is gonna be there for another 2 years until we're able to get it fixed. To answer your question, you're absolutely 100% correct. The assessed value in the school city of Hobart's taxing district, we'll call it, does need some help. And we are looking for opportunities and ways to do that, understanding, I'm gonna be honest, and I know that we have representation from other school districts in here. I get asked all the time, and the demand to put housing in the Hobart School District is through the roof. And we actually have some parcels that aren't in the Hobart School District that they're not building on residentially because they want it to be in the Hobart School District because they don't feel that they could build the house enough, get enough return on their investment to make it worth to build it in other school districts. So it's a challenge. But to your point, that lends its hand to industrial buildings and that type of stuff out by Maryville Farms, which we've seen a growth in. Now, the question that I'm asked is, what's the answer, right? The answer is, for us, is to have people reinvest in their community, in their homes, right? And also look at things that we could do within that boundary, such as maybe in downtown, we're going vertical, right? Maybe we're getting more investment in the downtown because from my standpoint, from a city standpoint, every house, that single family that we build across the country, right? It's about it costs our taxpayers $1.27 to provide services for every $1 assessed value for a single family home. So we lose money on building houses, is what I'm saying. So we gotta go vertical, we have to, I know that that's a big thing in our school district, is to create some value within that. I'm creating value in all of our school districts, but I understand that that's a huge concern. And we set out, we're getting creative, we've talked to multiple people that wanna reinvest. And it takes time, really, but it's on our radar and we're trying to do it. But once again, the problem is every piece of available land, residential developers are trying to buy it up because they know they can make money on homes that are
So
built
then
in.
you're saying basically that, so we're just gonna do more residential, so we're gonna take this 24 by 24 lot that has a single home on it, and now we're gonna put an apartment building with 4 homes on it,
I did
which
not-
would have kids and so on and so
Nope,
forth.
I
This
didn't- nope.
makes this kind of liquid.
Nope, didn't say that, nope, I'm saying that we need to reinvent what it looks like, right? So does it make, could a building downtown, just hypothetically, right? Could it have retail on the bottom, maybe some restaurants, right? Could it have office space above it, right? Could we take a building that's currently assessed at, I don't know, 250,000 and make it $1.5 million, $2 million, $3 million by having that type of investment in our downtown? Is that possible? Yeah, they're doing it in other communities. We're talking to developers to do those. The interesting thing, like let's take Fishers, right? So I mentioned that I got to go meet other mayors. What's interesting about some of the developments they're doing is there's very minimal impact to those type of developments to their school district. They get the assessed value growth, which makes their school strong, and they don't have the impact from a per head count. So it's a lot of divorcees, retirees, or young professionals that are occupying some of those buildings. So it's a fluid situation, and it's not, there's no easy one problem solves it all. But our goal here is to continue to grow the assessed value, which for us drives the tax rate down, but it also, for the civil city, drives the tax rate down, but it also lends its hand to the school district as well. So we're trying, but it's coming. Just how quick is the question.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
So you're talking about vertical, commercial?
Potentially,
Yes.
yeah. But I don't want to get lost that we're building these, that we're taking single-family homes and making them, 2-story, 3-story. That wasn't what I was saying. But what we're seeing a lot of in Hobart right now is people wanting to do infill lots. So you have a home, a vacant lot, and then another home. People are they're buying those lots and putting homes up because they want to be in the school city. I can tell you right now that I've talked to multiple developers trying to develop land south of 61st that walked away from the deal because it's not in Hobart Schools District. So.
No, I was just gonna say, driving here, they're working on the front of the Bright Spot building today, which, if they get that back open, there's gonna be more tax money there. I mean, that's the vertical, get that downtown area built up. I always wondered why they didn't face the lake with things, but that was before my time.
It's a challenge, and so you look at all these communities that are doing very well. Maybe the donut community